Okay, back on with Steve Mason, private investigator in Arizona, and his profile will be linked below if you want to connect with him. I highly recommend you do. He loves to help people transition, and he's a one of the best investigators that I've had a chance to work with. We worked together on some Facebook things when I was at Facebook and some other things. So Steve is a great guy, and let's talk a little bit more about these PI opportunities out there, because I don't think a lot of people in federal law enforcement really understand that their experience in federal law enforcement can directly translate to something in the private sector as a private investigator. As a PI, you do a lot of different things. Can you go into that a little bit? Tell us kind of the different segments or industries that you serve.
Sure. So a lot of what I work in, I do a lot of criminal defense and civil litigation work. And in this, I think everybody watching probably understands, what criminal defense is. But for me, civil litigation was a bit different, right? Because as a criminal investigator, every now and then we might work on something that's civil, right? If the government's being sued and we're called in to help, but we don't really dive too much into that. But that's a huge payout if you go in the private investigation world is civil litigation, because those are $1 million lawsuits. There's a lot at stake, and you're looked at as an investment in the case, basically. So we do a lot of like personal injury, fatal car accidents, a lot of nursing home abuse cases, um, really any type of civil litigation, whether it's defamation, HR lawsuits, it really can run the gamut. But like you said, your skills kind of transfer over because it's still the same old digging through discovery, doing research, interviewing witnesses, doing backgrounds, just all that investigative work, canvassing, you're just applying it to a different industry, but it's kind of the same techniques.
Now computer crimes, social media, there are all these kinds of things out there. And I know you're not a computer crimes investigator, but you are a social media investigator. You've been through the social media investigations training, and you talk about that a lot on some other podcasts. What does that entail generally when you're doing these searches on social media? What kind of investigations are they? If you can talk
Sure.
about them, of course, without any attribution.
Yeah, so a lot of guys, you'll hear a lot of people refer to as OSINT or open source intelligence. Um, Obviously, we're looking for anything in these profiles that really helps the case. So, if I'm trying to locate someone, I had a locate case on a guy who had skipped out on a $42 million loan. So they needed to locate him to get him served. And it's not as simple as running someone's driver's license when they're on the run, on a $42
Yeah,
million loan.
hit their
Um,
bank accounts.
Yeah, but what's interesting is as a PI, we have access to a lot of the same databases, that people have in law enforcement, Clear, Accurate, TLO, all these types of databases. But a lot of times, you run into the laundry list of addresses. You don't really know what's good, what's bad. So, a situation like that, I might be looking at someone's Facebook to see pictures that they're posting from inside their house or in their yard, and I start to pick out those little unique things in those photos, and I start matching that up with like maybe a realtor's website as prior photos of the house to say, oh, yep, that's definitely the house they're at. Or like Twitter's great, because a lot of people leave their geo services on so you can geolocate tweets. And it can be something as simple as, hey, we need a photo of this person because nobody even knows what they look like. We're trying to identify a witness to maybe they're making dumb comments, online. We get that a lot, in car accident cases where it's like, hey, we want to see if there's anything on his Facebook, where he's talking about the accident, or maybe he's posting drag racing videos, things that just can really discredit someone in court.
Or criminal associates, or
Yeah.
civil issues as well. But people who say they don't know each other, but they're connected on social media, those are always my
Or,
favorite.
or even with like LinkedIn, sometimes an attorney wants an invested background because they want to know how is someone going to present in court? What types of jobs have they had? Are they used to public speaking? Have they been in professional environments? So, are they going to come into court looking good? Are they going to be articulate? I mean, there's so much information you can tell about someone just by the way they interact on LinkedIn, the types of jobs they've had. With the attorneys, it's all about strategy, and there's millions and millions of dollars on the line with some of these lawsuits. I mean, it's literally every little thing they can know about someone helps.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's so many different things that you can do as a private investigator. Especially people who are transitioning that have detective or special agent experience. There's a lot more that is open to you. I'll ask you. I talk about this often, but do you do any executive protection, or is that a different licensing for you, or have you been involved in that in the private sector?
I haven't done any in the private sector. There's a lot of PIs that do. There's a lot of armed security folks that do. I did a lot of executive protection in the Marshal Service. It was kind of something I never really, even though I did it, it was something I never really identified with. I didn't really enjoy it too much. There's definitely a large private industry for that type of work, and it's really good work if you get involved in it. It can be very exciting. Um, I've kind of just focused on the investigative piece. It's what I like to do. I like to be home, during certain hours. I don't. I think one of the attractions of being in business is you create the environment that brings you joy and pleasure and that you like to play in, versus when you work for the government, maybe you're kind of forced into certain environments.
Definitely.
And I feel like with executive protection, you kind of get forced into those environments. Your schedule is dictated a little bit more for you. So it's, something I have avoided, but there's definitely a lot of work out there for people that like to do that type of stuff.
So let's go back to clients, and we were talking a little bit about billing. What are some of the challenges there? I mean, you talked about you have to get out there and you have to market yourself, but how do these folks prepare to have those engagements before they've left military, law enforcement, whatever it is, and they've transitioned? How can they get ready to have those interactions with clients, or become better at marketing or whatever?
I think I think it's important to learn sales skills. Nobody wants to be known as a salesman, but I think I think you've read some books with Grant Cardone or some of his podcasts, and the one thing he preaches is no matter who you are, everybody has to sell in life, whether you're the buyer, the seller, everything's always a negotiation, it's always a sale. So I think learning some of the sales techniques, like how do you close deals? Government employees, we don't sell stuff. We get handed work, we do it, and the second we're done, the more work comes in. And it takes a little bravery training to go into a law office, present yourself, and then try to close a deal. Um, so I think kind of like working through that, reading about it and just learning. I would say if you're transitioning from law enforcement, spend more time learning about business than you do about investigative techniques. Because I think you'll do very well with the investigative techniques, but it's the business side. Yeah, I always tell people I think good businesses fail not because they're not good at what they do or the products they produce, but because they don't know how to run the business side of it. And I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, and how did you learn that? Was that just through your relationships, mentorships, and just getting out there and reading and experiencing it?
Part of it was just reading, learning, but I joined a lot of groups. I mean, I would join every networking group because I wasn't good at, the elevator pitch, the 30-second sales pitch. And so I would actually go to groups that trained that practice that they would bring in sales speakers. We would role play. I used to go before the pandemic. I joined the Arizona Small Business Association. I would go to all the speed dating networking things that they
Yeah,
had, where every 30 seconds you're changing seats. Just learning how to talk about yourself, how to pitch your ideas, your businesses, just really becoming comfortable talking to people in a sales environment. Because for me, that definitely wasn't a skill that I was comfortable with.
talking to people without using an acronym, or talking
Or dro-
about your last arrest or something.
yeah, or dropping an F bomb, or
Yeah.
you know, and and I think a lot of times too with like people that are retired that are transitioning, you hear them throw out a lot of they'll tell you about retirement a lot. They'll say the words retirement a lot, and I always think like that puts an image in someone's head that you only want to work so much, and then you want to have your retirement. And I think it's very competitive in the private industry, and I think these people want to feel like you're all in 100%, like all your time and attention is just them. The reality is you have other things you like to do in life, but so I think it's just kind of dialing in that how do you have that conversation, with your prospects, and it's a lot of networking, a lot of failure, a lot of meetings. It's the thing with like when you're an entrepreneur is you don't mind failing because it just makes you come back that much stronger. So I think if you really have that spirit, it's you'll fail, but you'll come back even hungrier the next time.
It's a great place to kind of end it. I'll let you, can you elaborate on that at all? You want to give a last kind of piece of advice to the folks that are watching about that? I think failure is a great place to end on, but it's not, I'll say, it's not the end. You will overcome these things. I mean, you certainly have it, but I think it's okay to talk about it. But any last thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you really have to go in with the burn the ships mentality. You
Wow.
can't come in it with a backup plan. I mean, I'll never on my last day as I was walking out, someone's like, "You'll be back," and I turned around and I was like, "Look, mother effer, you failed and you came back. I'm leaving the Mars service and I'm never coming back." And that was my attitude. Like I wanted it as much as I wanted to breathe because the reality is I pay my mortgage off of this job. I didn't collect retirement the day I walked out the door, so it was. But I think that made me hungrier because I knew like to survive, I had to make this business work. And I think sometimes we leave with the idea of like, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll go work over here, over there. And I think those businesses don't work out because in the back of their minds, they already have the backup plan. And I forget who said it. It might have been Denzel Washington or someone, but they're like, there's no room for plan B because it distracts from plan A,
Love
so it's
that.
just, I think that's just really the mentality you have to go in with, that you can't go back. This has to work.
Yeah, yeah, I love the burn the ships analogy in referring to you've sailed to an island or to another part of the world and you're not going back. And I think that's a great place to leave it. What I do want to tell people is, don't go this alone. Folks like Steve and I, we're resources to you. And while we say, you've got to have plan A and focus on that and drive your plan forward and do these things, you aren't alone. Steve's a great resource to reach out to and talk with about this. Look for mentorship opportunities because this is how we are going to get things done here in the future. We're here to help you. But Steve, I really appreciate you talking with us for these posts and you got a great experience. I love hearing about it, and I totally agree with you. I'm going to go light my pitchfork and go burn my boat right now. So thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. And we've talked a lot before, but it's always good to catch up with you and share these ideas with the LinkedIn public.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me participate.
Yeah, buddy.